Hey guys, it's Elijah. I'm at an awesome place. This is called Longstreet Society, and this society is a historical society to commemorate the life of General James Longstreet. He was a Civil War veteran, and he aided General Robert E. Lee at Gettysburg and other battles. But not if you didn't know this, since I'm a history buff, after the war, he actually became a Republican, and he was demonized by Southern Democrats. And yes, I'm not talking like modern Democrats today. I'm talking like back in the old South Democrats, or during that time. Anyway, not only that, for some reason he actually had connections with Grant's cousin, I believe, but I could be wrong. So here it is, Longstreet Society. Hello, sir. What's your name?
I'm Richard Pilcher.
Nice to meet you. Now, what is your position here?
Well, I manage the James Longstreet Museum here.
Okay, awesome. Wow, how old is this Longstreet? Is it a hotel, a motel? What is it?
Well, it was opened as a three-story, two-wing hotel in 1876. So it's 130 years old, 140 years old, something like that.
Okay, so why did General Longstreet, why did he want to come down to Gainesville? That's interesting.
Well, he had, his brother lived in Cleveland, and his brother advised him that Gainesville was a good business town, and there were business opportunities here. And the railroad was coming just in the next year or two. So he decided to move here and build his home and go in business here.
Oh, okay. Hey, I see an old house there. Was it had relations with the hotel?
It does. The man who built the hotel, or who started building it, Mr. Alva Smith started this hotel, and then he went broke, and Longstreet bought him out and finished it. But Alva Smith was at the same time building that house across the street for his family home, and he finished that, and they lived there for 30, 35 years.
All right, let's see a cool tour of this place. I like this. I like how it's old. It's very old South, like here in Georgia. All right. Oh wow! Look at these.
Make yourself at home.
All right. Look, this is awesome. Is this like the old wood?
Arkansas pine. No, this is not the original floor. When we got to building, the floor just rotted out, and we had to replace it. So for some reason our architect picked Arkansas pine. Now, there's a lumber mill in Cleveland, Georgia, that makes flooring that looks just like this. So I don't know why he didn't get it there, but anyway, he had it shipped from Arkansas.
Okay, this is awesome. Tell me about this piano here. And are these original furniture?
No, nothing. We've got one chair in the museum room that's original.
Okay.
This organ was it was from a family here in Hall County, but it was not. It was donated recently, but it's about the right age. Wow. And it still plays.
That is awesome, sir. I like this. What do you call these types of chairs? Is this like Victorian or?
Yeah,
what?
I think probably it is.
Okay.
Sort of a mix of.
Oh, I love those drawings. Wow. What really struck me is when I came in here for the first time, I saw this long. Is this an oil painting of General Longstreet?
It is. It's it's on loan for the National Park Service, and the original was at Gettysburg, and the Park Service told them to send it to Chickamauga. So they got the original artist to do a quick, cheap copy, as they called it, and that's the quick, cheap copy, and we have it on loan from the Park Service.
So what's the history behind this? Was this like after the war, or was this like during it?
That's after General Longstreet died. His widow had that done, and based just from photographs. But when it was ready, she couldn't pay for it, so the artist kept it. And when he died, his family gave it to the Park Service, and the original is at Chickamauga.
Okay. So I heard y'all were like I know you're a society, but I heard you're like I guess a club too, right? Y'all talk about history of General Longstreet and just Civil War history too?
We have about 500 members, and they're scattered all over the world. So we don't get together and talk about much of anything.
Oh, okay.
We have one annual event, is our annual seminar, and it's normally held at one of the battlefields. And we spend a weekend with normally 75 to 100 of our members come. We have about 500 members, but some of them we've never seen. I have a man who's been a member since 1994 who called me this week and said he was getting on in years and he wanted to remember us in his will, and he said, I need some information on where to tell him to send it. So we were happy to give him that information.
Thank you for sharing that. I actually, my grandpa and I, we do Civil War reenactments, and we go down to Gainesville at Hurricane Show Parks, and he portrays General Rob D. Lee, and I portray Lieutenant Colonel Walter H. Taylor, who gave out his orders. And I got to tell you, this is an awesome society. Was General Lee close with General Longstreet, or do you know the history?
They were close friends. General Lee was not an infantry officer. He was an engineer.
Oh, he was? Oh, okay.
So he needed infantry help, and Longstreet was his right-hand man. He was second in command throughout the war.
Oh, wow. Now, what is this? This struck me, Wilson Room. Is that after President Woodrow Wilson?
Yeah. After the war, Mrs. Wilson's aunt lived across the street, and she decided, since her mother had died, she'd come to her aunt when her babies were born. And she got off the train down here in labor for the first baby, and that scared her. So for the second one, she brought Woodrow with her, and they checked in here about a month early. And they stayed here, I think, 3 weeks before that baby was born, and then a week after it was born. She was born here, and she was married in the White House when her daddy was president. And that's her picture right over there on the wall.
Wow. Like an original one, or is that just like a copy? Or
her name? Well, I don't know. Somebody gave us that. I think it's a copy, but
this is like a copy of her.
Yeah.
All right. I like that. Thank you.
Her name was Jessie Woodrow Wilson.
All right. Oh yeah. There's the uniforms of the North and the South. And I just want to say this to y'all. Even though the American Civil War between the states, or whatever you want to call it, is controversial, I'm just here as a fellow reenactor who just likes to preserve the history because what defined us and made us the actual United States of America. And I just like this place, Richard.
Well, it certainly settled the issue of slavery. There were 4 slave states in the Union side during the Civil War. But before that, before the year 1865 was over, everybody had to outlaw slavery. And the 4 Union states were the last.
Yep.
Believe it or not.
I'll empathize with you. This is awesome museum. My third great grandfather, he was a reverend, and I'm not going to say his name. He got his toe shot off at the Battle of Chickamauga, and I haven't been to Chickamauga yet. But by God's grace, he survived the war. And but I have been to Kennesaw.
You should go to Chickamauga. It's right in the neighborhood.
All right.
It's about an hour and a half drive over there.
Yeah, he fought in the 33rd Alabama Regiment Infantry. Now tell me about this room. What is this? I see like a replica.
This is our library.
Oh, okay.
And, this uniform has been given to us by a man who did a Longstreet impersonation for many years, and he did a really good one. But he's lost his eyesight, so he can't do that anymore. So he gave us his uniform, and the beard's coming off the mannequin.
No, yeah. I like it. Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. Now, tell me what this looks. This looks old. What is this?
Well, this is his. This middle section of wall here is dedicated to his second wife, who is a historical character in her own right. She was the state of Georgia's first female employee.
Wow.
She was the first female in the Georgia National Guard and the first female officer in the Georgia National Guard.
What?
She managed the state library in the state capitol. They didn't have the internet, so they had to have a library in the capitol for information purposes. And this is her family Bible.
Wow. How old is that?
I don't know. Let's see, probably some dates in here. Well, the earliest one I see is 1896, but there's an 1867 date.
Okay. Yeah. Now, who's this, sir?
That's James Longstreet Jr., and he's the second James Longstreet Jr. The first one died of scarlet fever during the war, so the Longstreets named another son James Longstreet Jr., and he was a cavalry officer in the U.S. Army. The post where he was stationed had a change in command, had a new commanding officer, so they were doing a change in command ceremony, and as he led his troop in passing in review in front of his new commander, he fell off his horse dead, died of a heart attack right in front of the new guy.
Oh, wow.
I think that was kind of rude, but
yeah, that's something else.
that's the way it happened.
All right, this room right here. Before I go in, I just want to film this real quick. I like this old looking mirror. I like how, is this the original design of the Piedmont Hotel?
That's a sketch of the original hotel.
Oh, the sketch, okay, yeah. All right, okay, thank you.
I don't know where that came from. I don't think I've ever seen it before.
Oh, I like, okay.
Stuff turns up here sometimes I don't know about.
In my opinion, I don't know about this yet, but this is the best room. It's really mesmerized me. Tell me about this. What is
Well, it's
this?
changed a lot. There's a man named Bob Mattis. And Bob was a relic dealer, and he kind of got tired of traveling and so forth, and so he's 3 museums, and he sets up a display in all those 3 museums, and he rotates his stuff around so it's fresh. Right now, he's got a lot of his stuff out of here, and we filled in with some Gone with the Wind stuff. One of our ladies is a Gone with the Wind fanatic, and she belongs to a group that has a little bit of the set for Gone with the Wind, which is just rotted little pieces of lumber, and that's about all they've got.
I love that place. It was one of the I think that's the longest movie I've ever seen in my life, but Scarlett O'Hara, how she was so stubborn, how she was so whiny, it really captured my attention, and how she wanted to be with Ashley Wilkes, but like, I don't know, the story of Gone with the Wind, especially the movie, I haven't read the books, it's just really, just fascinating.
Gettysburg's a little longer than that.
Oh, wow, it is?
You still should sit through it one time, it's worth seeing it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's an interesting Confederate uniform.
Well, that was a movie uniform.
Oh, it was?
But,
Oh, okay.
But the point is, this one is the color that they used at the beginning of the war, and the dye was imported from Europe. And then the blockade took effect, and they couldn't import all that dye. They could import things, but they need more important things than dye, so they didn't import it. And they started dyeing it with walnut husk. And they'd boil that walnut husk, and they'd come up with a liquid like that. And we boiled some walnut husk to get that. Then we took a hank of white wool and we dyed it with our homemade dye. Pretty close, huh?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's one thing I love about how the South, they just started their own country. Jefferson Davis was their president, and how General Lee, he actually chose to fight with the Confederate States of America because he couldn't draw a sword up against Virginia. And I liked that. I thought that was very honorable of him.
I've heard all that story. The Virginians really proud of themselves. They brag a lot. Let me tell you, there were some guys from the rest of the South that were just as good as those Virginians. And some of the Virginians that you hear so much about weren't all that good.
Oh, okay.
He didn't make it till now. Joe Johnston did, and Joe Johnston was really good. Longstreet said Joe Johnston was the best we had.
John Bell Hood.
John Bell Hood was a great division commander, but beyond that, he was not very good.
Oh, he wasn't? Okay.
But Hood was a Texan. He wasn't a Virginian.
Okay.
But,
and Joseph E. Johnston, he defended Atlanta, didn't he? Against Sherman before it was burned down.
And Jeb Stuart had this habit of riding around capturing wagons. And when Lee really needed him at Gettysburg, he was out capturing wagons somewhere. He wasn't there. And Longstreet wanted to court-martial him. Lee agreed, but he said, we don't have anybody to replace him. So they decided to keep him home for a while. And there were other Virginians that didn't do so well. Study Stonewall Jackson, give him an honest appraisal, and you'll find that he was mediocre at best. I'll probably be assassinated for saying that. But the Virginians have sold us on how great Stonewall Jackson was, and really what he accomplished was he got himself killed. And it wasn't a real smart thing he did that day.
Right.
Jackson was aggressive. I'll tell you one thing. I hear people say if Jackson had been at Gettysburg, we wouldn't have lost it. Well, I agree with that. If he had been there instead of Ewell, looking up at Cemetery Ridge, and Jubal Early rode up and said, we better not try it, we don't know who's up there. Jackson would have said, get your division ready, we're going up. Ewell said, you're probably right, so they didn't. When they could have taken Cemetery Ridge, Ewell and Jubal Early stood there and looked at it and didn't do it. Jackson wouldn't have done that.
Wow.
It would have been a heck of a chance he was taking.
Very informative. Thank you, Mr. Pilcher. Tell me about this. I noticed the Confederate uniforms got like a difference between the Union ones. Like my grandpa, he likes to tell me the South would like put their insignia, their ranking on their collar, while the Union did it on their shoulders. And what really strikes me out is this. Can you explain to me why they got this design?
The looping, I really don't know how that all worked, but it depended on your rank. This guy here was a major with 1 star. And,
okay.
And that's your appropriate looping for a one star rank, or the major. Mm-hmm. Lieutenant Colonel had 2 stars, the Colonel had 3. Now, here's a strange thing. Robert E. Lee wore that Colonel's insignia the whole war, except for when he went to surrender, and then he put on a Confederate General's insignia.
Wow.
I don't know why.
That's fascinating.
Oh, God, Lee had boundless confidence.
Oh, confidence.
And
okay.
He had his confidence carried over to the people around him. He had that ability for certain.
Well, if he had confidence, and I'm just trying to understand, I'm curious, why would he wear a colonel uniform throughout the whole war? Except
now, there's 2 of us that don't know. And if every picture you see of him, we probably got one somewhere in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse, right? 1865, sometime in April.
Yeah.
With General Grant. Okay, so I like this stuff here.
There's a picture of him over there at the surrender.
Okay.
I'm not close enough to see what he's wearing, but he would be wearing the general's insignia there.
Yeah. I like it. Are any of these swords original, or are they just replicas?
Well, they're the right time period. We don't know. I understand this is a naval saber.
Union or Confederate?
Well, they both use the same ones.
All right. Now, who is that? Oh, wow. That's
one of the Longstreet sons in a VMI uniform.
Yeah, the Virginia Military
I forget
Institute.
Which one.
Okay. All right. Oh, are those, is that silverware?
It's a picnic set. Got nothing at all to do with General Longstreet. It's just about the right time period.
Oh, okay. For the soldiers?
Mr. Mattis brought, no.
Okay.
And what this green box is, I'm going to amaze you here. I don't know what's in here. No idea. I hadn't even noticed it up there. Looked like a shoebox.
All right, let's open up the mysterious box.
Get it to open. There it comes. I hope something's in here. There's a letter in here.
Oh, wow.
Women's shoebox.
What does it say?
This is part of the Gone with the Wind stuff.
I like that. So, hey, I found it. This is the original chair. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's General's granddaughter, Jamie. Called one day and she said, I've got a chair. They came from the Piedmont when it was a hotel. She said, I've had my husband put a good coat of paint on it and we're going to send it to you. I thought, oh no, wish she hadn't painted it.
You know, this struck me too. Is that the state of Georgia flag?
That's the old Georgia flag, and that was the last Georgia flag with a Confederate battle flag to fly at University of North Georgia, Gainesville. When they brought that down the pole, Dr. Young got it, and he kept it for a long time, didn't know what to do with it, and he finally gave it to us. You know, you hear this saying, those Confederate flags need to be in a museum, so okay, there's one, and there's one.
Okay, now that looks interesting. That says Manassas, Chancellorsville, Fredericksburg.
We tried to figure out what Confederate unit was at all those battles, and there was none. And Dr. Piston finally told me what that was. A little town in Mississippi. The veterans would get together and have a reunion every year. And veterans from that town had fought in all those battles, but not in the same unit.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, thank you. Do you have an original flag from the war?
No.
No, or not yet at least?
We used to have an original Union flag.
A Union, yeah, original.
It was on loan here, but he's moved it to another museum now, so.
Oh, okay. All right.
There's a lot of bullet holes in it. It was a testimony to Confederate marksmanship.
Okay, thank you. In your opinion, and like and I understand you're here to preserve the life of General Longstreet, so it's not really, after just the Civil War, but I'm just trying to figure this out. How do you view the American Civil War?
Well, soldiers all over the world have learned a lot from that war. A lot of new things developed. General Longstreet developed a good many of them, probably most of them. The idea of trenches. In the Revolutionary War, they used to line up and stand in a straight line and shoot at each other. That was the way the European wars were fought.
Yeah.
And they got over here and they found the American soldiers hiding behind trees and shooting at them, but still, the British tried to line up and stand there and shoot. But by the Civil War, Longstreet had them digging trenches and putting up barricades and stuff to protect the soldiers. He understood we didn't have as many as they did, and we had to take care of what we had. The problem was he couldn't get a lot of the other generals. General Lee believed in that frontal assault, and it was very costly, very costly. Longstreet resisted doing it that way. He liked to set up a good defense and let the Yankees come to us. Mortality rate is about 3-to-1. Defense loses 1 for every 3 the offense loses. And that's the kind of fight Longstreet wanted to fight, because we could win that one. And people say South never had a chance, but they came close a couple of times. Gettysburg was one of them. If Richard Ewell had taken the Second Corps up and taken Cemetery Ridge, the Yankees would have had to withdraw. The Battle of Gettysburg, we would have never heard of Gettysburg. It would have been fought somewhere else, close to Washington, and with the Yankees on the run. So we could have won the war right there. It was possible. I don't know if I like the idea of us winning the war. I don't know what kind of country it would be. I kind of like the one we've got now.
You're right. You're right. I love my ancestors. One of my grandpa Loggins' side, they fought for the Phillips Legion. They signed up at the Lonica Courthouse, he told me, and one of them on my Nana Log's side fought in Cobb's Legion, and then like I told you about my third great grandfather on my daddy's side. Was the Battle of Chickamauga? Is that Western Theater?
Considered Western, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what's your ancestry with the Civil War?
I was just going to mention my great grandfather Frank Blaylock. And
Okay.
This thing about slavery. I firmly believe if the African had never been brought to this country in bondage, we would have never had a Civil War. But if they'd gone to my great grandpa, who his mother and father and he and his sister farmed their farm. It was a small farm, and they worked really hard. They didn't have any slaves. If you'd gone to him and said, we're getting up an army to defend slavery, he'd probably said, let them rich guys go defend their own slaves. I'm not interested. They sold it as other things. The Yankees are invading our country and stealing our women and our livestock and all this stuff. They gave them all kind of other reasons.
Yeah, so it's not just about slavery. You think it was like for people like me who had to be drafted, or younger boys?
Personally, I think it was about slavery.
Okay. All right.
Now the SCV guys will argue with me about that.
SCV? Now who are they?
Sons of Confederate Veterans.
Oh, wow.
I was a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans for about 40 years, but this place here was just taking too much time, and I couldn't do that too, so I finally dropped out of it. and we don't all have to agree, and we didn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, and General Grant was very nice. As, of course, Abraham Lincoln was too. Very, very generous and just kind, and he did a very peaceful thing to Lee instead of letting him be hung at the gallows. Or
well, that may be true. I'm not going to agree to that. I had a little problem with Grant and.
Oh, okay. Well,
But Grant and Longstreet were good friends, and you mentioned the connection between Grant's wife and Longstreet. Grant's wife was Longstreet's cousin.
no way.
Longstreet introduced them. You know, it was in their early Army days, just out of West Point.
Antebellum period, or like what you said,
No,
Army
it's,
days? What?
yeah, just out of West Point, way before the Civil War. They were all second lieutenants.